So speaking of the growing community, one of the co-hosts in the mid-month episodes is Celeste de la Cabra. So Celeste, thank you so much for making time again.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And given that there's a little bit of an extra focus on the hardcore titles this month, we thought we would bring in one of somebody who's an expert in kind of vintage erotica, vintage hardcore, Eli Olsberg, dialing in from the West Coast. Eli, thanks for making time for this.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Wearing your AGFA t-shirt, which is
That's
exciting.
right.
Represent.
That's right.
Um,
One of my favorites.
oh, yeah, they're so good. Eli, do you want to give maybe just a 30-second intro at the top of kind of why you chose this episode to jump in and why, you wanted to kind of talk about the Valentine's special?
Yeah, sure. I've only been a subscriber fairly recently with Vinegar Syndrome, mostly for financial reasons. But back when I first I finally upgraded my TV to an OLED TV. I had already been consuming the Golden Age stuff porn wise long before that, but I don't know. I've always just really been drawn to it. I guess I'll reveal more about that as we go along. But the fact that they were like restoring them in these incredible, like even beyond like what DVD, the fact that there was like a 4K. One of the first
Yeah,
4K things I watched on my OLED was The Young Like It Hot, because I was like, when the fuck is this? When was this ever happened?
right, right.
So I got really stoked for that. I Just a little more background on me. I've always been really fascinated by porn because it's something that we consume culturally and we have for decades now, and yet it still has this real weird stigma to it,
Right.
even now, as sex positive if things have gotten. And when I first started doing stand up about 15 years ago, I had started a podcast with another comic called The Morning After, where we interviewed other performers in the adult industry with other comedians. And we did it for about 2 years, and it was really incredible because this was kind of, and I know I don't even think they exist as a company anymore. And I think they had like some scandalous stuff happen a few years ago, but we had a lot of people from kink.com, and it was really, especially for something when I was in my mid 20s, to kind of learn about.
Yeah.
And we picked up enough steam that we had gotten quite a few names in the industry. And so one of the things that we never really got to explore in the podcast, a lot of it was very contemporary, was the golden age stuff.
Yeah.
We tried getting some performers on. Notably, the person I had gotten in touch with was Georgina Spelvin. She was actually really cool about trying to do the show at some point, but she's like, I just don't live in LA, and Zoom was not a thing at the time, and that would have obviously changed a lot. But the Rialto Report kind of took those reins anyways. They're kind of doing the Lord's work with a lot of that stuff. I don't know if I answered your question in entirely, but I hope
No,
that that kind of went a
that's
few different directions.
that's awesome. And no, shout out to the Rialto report. I mean, if anybody's not listening to that, they should. Ashley's doing some amazing work there as well. You're right. Um,
Essential, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really cool. I think it sounds like you're approaching it from the same vantage point. I think one of the things I need to go listen to some of the back episodes of is what you recorded still online?
You know what? We stopped paying a
Okay.
couple years ago.
Okay.
Jake had hit me up and he was like, "Hey, we're still paying for web space for this, so I do have them in a hard drive somewhere, and I'll happily send them to you. And I'm sure some people have uploaded, like they probably swim around online somewhere, but
Mhm.
I do at some point. It's like one of those things I have to get to. Um, I have to put them on like Anchor or one of those free sites that kind of hosts it.
Yeah.
If this presidency doesn't destroy that shit, but who knows? I feel like if I put them up, I might get harangued into like a long term some kind of damage that I'm not even I can't even predict.
Just put it up on a
Sorry, I don't.
finished website if you have to, but uh,
Right, yeah, yeah. We'll get. We're going to the dark web, folks.
that's right. Yeah, but I think the thing that I love about what you're talking about, your approach, and as well as the Rialto report, is that, if you look at them as just like porn films and you kind of brush them aside, I understand if that's not really your thing, but the backstories and the characters in this world are amazing. There's some of the best stories I've ever heard that come from this world of just like shady dealings and I don't know, like it's wild. Like this backstories are as good as the movies.
Absolutely. And also, I think that they serve. I don't remember where I actually had listened to some podcasts with one of the Vinegar Syndrome crew members, and they kind of made a good point that, we talk about a lot of the stuff that they put out through Melusine now as like artifactual touchstones, but they also talk about like beyond artifact, it also serves. I mean, I guess this falls under artifact, but like, it should be preserved in the same way that like advertisements are preserved from that period, because
Yeah.
you don't just get to, obviously it gives you like cityscapes and stuff that you get to really see what New York or San
Hmm.
Francisco looked like in 1975 or 1980 or whatever, but you also get to find out what's transgressive from that period, what's
Sure.
aged well, what hasn't, just like any other movie. And I think that, but porn, I think, really dials into that more sometimes than art that's available more publicly or considered more um, friendly to people who don't watch porn.
Hmm.
Yeah. I was interesting. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I was watching The Tale of Tiffany Lust to prepare for this a little bit. And one of the things that caught me is that the things that people want to see on screen haven't really changed in all these years. Like if you look at the
Hmm.
individual sex scenes in that movie, it's the same stuff that's being broken up into like 4 and 5 minute chunks now.
Oh,
Um,
totally.
yeah, and it's just interesting to see that people's desires haven't changed. The only thing that's really changed is like maybe becoming slightly more open to talk about it. And like you said, it still has a stigma around it, but I think we're in a better place than we were in the 70s at least.
Oh, for sure. I also think that the other thing about watching these movies is that, and especially now with how digital everything is, and I don't just mean like porn, I mean like when you watch a movie, they have that terrible underlit digital sheen to them.
Mhm.
And 95% of these movies that are restored by Melusine, I think, just because they were shot, lit, blocked, like properly made as a photograph that was taken, 24 times in a second, just on that alone, they look better than 95% of what's released today. And that's not hyperbole. I genuinely believe that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the crew on these films is a lot of times Hollywood crew that's just doing side work, right? So you're getting
Yes, yes, yes,
really good
yes.
industry people.
100%. Yeah, people who like crossed over, and going back to Tiffany Lust, that was like partially directed by Radley Metzger, who did mainstream films and also did porn films. And he did a great job on both fronts.
Right. That's true. Celeste, how has this journey been for you? Because you've been tracking the Vinegar Syndrome stuff officially now for almost 6 months, maybe 4 or 5. Has there been any like learnings or things that you've kind of uncovered in your own journey here?
Yeah, I think it's just been really nice to just see more and more and more of these every month and see them in their nice cleaned up versions and go through the supplemental features and read the essays and everything. I feel like another thing I've started doing more purposefully is like if I know I'm going to be reviewing something, I'll literally just search it into the Rialto Report podcast and see if there's a podcast about it already, and I'll listen to that too as like supplemental listening.
Yeah.
And then half the time it ends up as a bonus feature anyway.
Uh-huh.
So it's like I kind of feel like I'm in a class and Ashley West is my professor right now, to be completely honest. And now I'm kind of helping share that information with other people. Yeah, I don't know. Another thing that is standing out to me the more of these that I watch is just you might think going into this that you know what you're gonna get and it's gonna be kind of the same thing over and over again, but there's really quite a diversity in the approaches and the aesthetics and the
Right.
storytelling of these films. Especially with this month's slate, which is a bit late, but it's good that we're getting to it. Because it's like, three of these films are like the early sexploitation stuff, like before hardcore really took off, and it is fascinating for me anyway. I've seen a few of these films now, and to me, they're so much less interesting than the hardcore ones, and
Yeah.
you would think that it would become less interesting now that you can just show what you're trying to show and like um I don't know, like that's what people are there for, and like you can finally just give it to them, so you don't need to have the sheen or the pretense of like plot as much.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it
yeah.
seems like it's the opposite. Like people kind of like these early nudie cuties and sexploitation, like there really is just like this smallest veneer of plot over like vignettes of nudity, you know?
Uh-huh.
Um,
I know it's not what we're
and
talking about today, but are you talking about like Blonde on a Bum Trip from a few months back, like that kind of stuff?
That one a little bit too. That one's kind of an anomaly because it's more like a drug scare film, but these
Yeah.
Ron Sullivan films are just, I mean, we'll get to it, but they were kind of like reading the essay. I enjoyed more than watching the movies, like the backstory and the context. And I don't even mean that as like a slight, like it's like, oh, the boring essay was even like the essay is great and like the history of it is great. And it's almost more interesting than the films, though watching the films is still the necessary context to kind of put it all into place and make everything make sense.
But
Um,
you're
but
right.
yeah,
It
we
does need it. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Actually, go ahead,
no,
Celeste.
no,
I
you're
just
good. Just yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just to piggyback on that. I was going to say that it is sometimes like similar to that when they did the Lost Picture Show on their main site.
Hmm.
Sometimes having context for them is better when you go to watch them because it does make it more. Because look, some of these are barely an hour, and if it's not good, it's gonna feel like you're watching Farewell My Concubine. Like the running
Hmm.
time will just go so really
Hmm.
crawl by. And depending on the context of that, I think you know, even outside of like Vinegar Syndrome stuff, I know the Ed Wood one is a great example of that. Like those are 50 minutes. When they released Severin released their hardcore slate of Ed Wood films. But if you know a little more context of those movies, and also you have to kind of be a real head for Ed Wood stuff, but that makes it, I think, more even more enjoyable.
Hmm. Yeah. This little trio of releases that we're talking about today, like I guess it's kind of striking to me how completely different they all are and like how um each time I watch one of these, I feel like I get something new and I'm still surprised by like um I don't know. Just the different like you can still see like the artist imprint on like the filmmaking style and the aesthetic and the storytelling and they're often pretty rough around the edges in like a storytelling kind of perspective because it becomes clear the difference between like a first pass script and something that's actually been edited and like gone through a couple people because it's like it's almost like you're watching the first draft of like a fairly expensive film and that is pretty fascinating in and of itself. Yeah, I don't
I
know.
the thing that stood out to me as I've been listening a little bit more of the Rialto Report recently and watching more of these movies is the pace in which they were made. Like I feel like it's worth calling
Hmm.
out. Like a lot of these are like on a weekend or a day. Like, we're getting to see something that it's not like they had 6 months and trailers and I mean these things were just pumped out, right? And so like
Hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting to think about just going to work and then like leaving work on a Friday, going and like shooting this over the course of a weekend, and then just going back to work on Monday, and then it comes out and makes $20 million in the box office. Some of these ones that are like these massive underground hits.
Yeah, I think part of that has to do also with like, you know, regulations. Like back then, you just, I mean, porn barely is they're not unionized still to this day in a I guess in the way that we think of unions, but
Mm,
there's protections now, obviously, because of what's changed and what's developed in terms of like, you know, sexually transmitted diseases and stuff. But at the time, none of that existed, as far as
mm,
I know. I'm sure there were some. I know there were collectives, but nothing in the sense that like um, that exists where like there were testing services and all that, but also just things where people and again, I don't know how much of that now. I don't know when someone goes to shoot a porn scene, can they just shoot for 12 hours and then you know, but also they're not shooting full features, so it just works
right.
so differently. And
Yeah, I think so.
we're not talking about film either. We're talking about you know shooting digitally and shooting on DSLRs and stuff
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversation about how the AIDS sort of epidemic changed the industry a lot.
for sure.
Because that's one thing. I mean, not to get too specific, but there's not a lot of condoms in these movies. And the combination of not a lot of condoms and not a lot of doctor visits can be dangerous if and so
Hmm.
you don't that side of the industry I think has been kind of documented. But yeah, that was rough, I think, for a few years there until they started to make some positive changes there. But I think, we're in the middle of this Valentine's Day sale now. By the time this drops, it will be over. I think because it ends on Sunday night, if I remember correctly. I think it
That's
ends.
right.
Hmm.
Okay. So we're not necessarily going to give people insights on what to buy for the Valentine's Day sale. But I am a little curious, just before we jump into the movies, Celeste, and then I'll let you take over. But I'm a little curious y'all's perspective on this Valentine's Day sale because I mean, I hate to come on a Vinegar Syndrome podcast and say that I was disappointed in it, but I was kind of wanting at a minimum another Melusine title or something kind of splashy. And I don't know a lot about the Quality X title that dropped. The what's it called? The Blonde Goddess. It seems
Hmm.
like it's kind of a jungle adventure movie, so maybe it's really good. I don't know. And then they did the Vixens of Kung Fu. Those were the two releases, right?
Hmm.
That's right. Yeah, the Blonde Goddess one I'm not familiar with either, to be honest. It's funny. That's what I love about collecting this stuff is that I genuinely think I've plumbed the depths of the pornographic soul, and I find out there's something new
Yeah.
every month. Or though I will say that that triple feature that dropped, Vixens of Kung Fu, that was obviously an upgrade from a DVD, and also from that 5 years, five
Hmm.
films compilation they did that goes for the price of like a dozen eggs now, but it's like so expensive if you want the porn volumes of those 5 years. But it's another comp with a film called Sunny with Candida Royale, which anything she's in that I've seen has always been worthwhile.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Um,
she's got a book. There's a book you can buy on Melusine called The Sexual Revolution, or
hmm.
excuse me, Candida Royale and the Sexual Revolution: A History from Below. And I haven't finished reading it. I actually have it, and my library had it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good. I think it's a great read because she, from what I've been gathering of the book so far, is that she's kind of was at odds with herself for a little while because of her feminism. And I don't know, sex positivity back then, that word, I'm not sure even how, if it even came up. But
Hmm.
she started her own production company down the line and started directing porn that she thought was removing a lot of the misogyny. That's about as far
Hmm.
as I know from the book. But it's absolutely, I think, a worthwhile read for that reason. And one of the, I think it's Nightbird, the third movie on that,
Hmm.
features Robin Bird. Do you both know who that is?
I do not.
No.
Robin Bird hosts a public access show called The Robin Bird Show
Okay.
in New York. And I don't know if she still hosts it, but I know she hosted it for like at least 25 years.
Wow.
It was just this talk show, but Al Goldstein was involved with it, and they went to court a few times to, like, New York Public Access tried scrambling the show in some capacity. I think it was through time. I want to say Time Warner was the one who
Okay.
tried to do this, where you had to specifically notify your cable provider to unscramble the show.
Oh, okay.
Um, and as far as I know, they never won. But she kind of became uh, like a real kind of, a lot of people know that show in New York because of the public access show. If I want to say on the Foxtrot Blu-ray, one of the Command Cinema Blu-rays, there was an episode of the Robin Bird Show on there, and she has, I believe, Cecil Howard on and does interviews at the Pussycat Theater on Santa Monica in West Hollywood for the premiere of it. It's an incredible time capsule, even more so than the movie itself.
Is it like
Really
because
cool.
in Tale of Tiffany Less, there's that character Florence Nightingale that has a show where she like people come on and just tell her their desires and she like has sex with them. But I'm assuming it's not like that. It's more of a traditional talk show.
Correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That I think is more of like a send up of Dr. Ruth would be my
Yeah,
guess.
I think
But
so too.
but
Yeah.
but no, the Robin Bird show's more. If you've ever seen New York Public Access, it's really incredible stuff. It's like the closest thing to like pirate radio on TV, because you can really show anything. And apparently, a lot of people in the '80s, that was kind of their uh, that could be their porn sometimes. Not necessarily the Robin Bird show, but just the stuff
Hmm.
that would get kind of funneled into their airwaves.
Interesting. Super interesting. Yeah, Celeste, what about you? Any how do you what do you think about this month before we jump into the titles from last month?
Um, I mean, I do think it's strange that there's not a new Melusine title for the big Melusine sale, but there was one last month, so I guess I'm pretty satisfied with four films across two releases and a triple feature from Picorama. I'm also excited to dive into this partner label title, Her Body. I was like really interested in it when it was announced earlier in the
Yeah.
month.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and they
Yeah,
did
same.
go hard on merch, which I love the Sex World shirt so much. That's one of my favorite hardcore films, and I don't know. There's out of my size, but if they reprint it, I might have to get it.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
there's some cute patches and a pin. There's these little Valentine's Day hearts, which is fun. Something that I noticed kind of recently that I think is strange because when I saw that Blonde on a Bum Trip and Little Orphan Sammy were on sale and I like just reviewed those, I was like, damn, has it already been 6 months? Like that math doesn't check out to me.
Uh-huh.
But it's not. They came out in October, I think. And so it's like 4 months. So they're already putting this stuff on sale like faster than they do for the regular site. And it's nice that there's a little section on the regular site of discounted stuff as well, which is not something I was expecting, but that's cool. Um, oh, and Through the Looking Glass is already on sale too. And
Oh,
that's the one that I think was October.
that's a
I was
must
just like,
buy.
damn, that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I had really positive things to say about it in my review. It's so sick. So I definitely recommend. It's nice that I like just reviewed these and people can now get them half off if they're so inclined, but I just think that's interesting. I'm not sure what that says about anything that they are going on sale faster. Because yeah, it said November was the cutoff, or before November was the cutoff in the FAQ, and so that's only 4 months as opposed to their usual 6. Um, and it's nice. I mean, just like basically all the releases are on sale now, and it was nice to catch up on my Vinegar Syndrome going out of print stuff because
Yeah.
they're not what's the word I'm looking for? They're not branding any of the hardcore stuff as VS anymore, and all that stuff is out of print. I gotta say, I wonder what's gonna happen to those because people are complaining about re-releases from you know ancient DVDs that are been out of print for a while, which is fine with me. Like I want these to be available and I want them in HD.
Yeah.
But I hate the idea that like Corruption and Pretty Peaches and what's the one? The Roberta Findlay one.
Oh,
Uh,
A Woman's Torment, which is one of their
Yeah,
most
Woman's
recent. Yeah.
Torment. Like the idea that those will be out of print is a bummer to me. So I'm like, are they gonna start packaging these and like triple features through Picorama or whatever? I don't know. I hope that they come back out, but I feel like people will complain. So, but it's nice that I was able to catch up on the rest of them pretty dirt cheap. A few of them sold out before they went to the steep discount, so I missed a few, but
Mm.
you know,
A Woman's Torment is one that I hear brought up a lot as kind of like essential viewing if you're interested in the history of cinema at all.
it's really
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Her Name Was Lisa is another one that's one of my all-time favorites in this genre that is now out of print, and that's just a shame to me. Maybe they'll do a 4K of it on Melusine because I think it is that good. But actually, Corruption is another one I could see them doing. Some of these I feel like are just going to get 4Ks through Melusine, but
Yeah.
presumably not all of them. And I mean, like Nine Lives of a Wet Pussy, that is Abel Ferrara. I mean, and that's now out of print with a commentary from Sam Deegan on it, which I managed to get the last copy of that, and I bought it exclusively for the commentary because I wasn't the biggest fan of the film, but I did watch it on a kind of a crappy like Plex stream, so it'll be nice to revisit it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just wishing into the ether that these don't disappear and they come back in some capacity.
Um, well, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they shape the line. Even just the fact that we've talked about this before on this show, but even just the fact that it's a separate website, I don't know if people think to go check it sometimes when they're on the first of the month, when they're doing their
Hmm.
Vinegar Syndrome order.
Hmm.
And there's like a minor thing if anybody from Vinegar Syndrome is listening. Every time I click on Melusine from the Vinegar Syndrome website, I have to log in again. If there's a way to
Hmm.
keep logged in and keep those two together, that would be easy for my lazy ass. But
Can I offer speculation on why that is?
yeah, tell me.
I have a feeling it has to do with because the shop app is on Vinegar Syndrome and the shop app's not on Melusine. If it wouldn't surprise me if that was the
Hmm.
the credit card processing, because I believe Grindhouse Video said that's why they stopped carrying the adult titles because they were switching off PayPal. And so I know with Shop it keeps you logged in sometimes on Vinegar Syndrome site and
Yeah,
Melusine's separate from it. So I have a feeling that's a lot of that's to blame for those issues. And I frankly I find the Shop app a little annoying, but
Me too.
just because of how it keeps you logged in. If you want to pay another way, you have to like check out as
It's
guest,
a
then
whole
log
thing.
back in.
Yep.
Yeah, it's such a fiasco.
The price must be right though, because a lot of the boutique labels are on it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely not a perfect e-commerce thing, but it gets the job done, I guess. So what I think we should do, if it's okay, is let's spend a few minutes because we can certainly get back. I know Eli, there's a lot you want to talk about. But Celeste, you have a couple titles from, is it December and January, or where?
It is, I believe it's December and November.
Okay, November and December. So you want to catch us up to 2025?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I think the Ron Sullivan title was the only one that was included for the Black Friday titles, and that's probably why it sold really well because it was in that kind of batch.
Yeah.
Um, and then Alexandra and Passions of Carol are Christmas films, which is fun. So they were the December releases. I'm not sure how many Christmas porn films exist. From what I was reading, going through the release of Passions of Carol, that was a pretty novel idea, and it didn't do well. So I don't know how many of them they really tried, but
Right.
Alexandra's definitely more subtle about it. Um, so yeah, I guess let's just go through those. And then we can start off 2025 next time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I should say I'm no longer a subscriber, so it's they're not kidding that the subscribers get their boxes first because it's taking forever for me to get my January titles, and it's just like, well, I don't know. I feel like people aren't rushing to get these titles or hear about them as much as they are like the proper VS stuff. So I guess if there's a month delay, it's not that big of a deal, and people
I
can hear it when they hear it, and maybe by then it'll even be on sale again. Who knows?
exactly, yeah. I I do hope that they get into that new warehouse space because that seems to be giving them a
Hmm.
lot of headaches.
Yeah.
So if anybody's local and wants to help them move some boxes and get into the warehouse, go hit up Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah. So I'll do my like typical kind of reviews for these, but I think Eli said that he has seen Alexandra and Passions of Carol, so I'd be happy to have it be more of a discussion based format. But let me go ahead and talk about these Ron Sullivan films since I think I'm the only one who watched them. Chris, you have the box, right? But you haven't seen them yet.
I've not seen them.
Okay. So Ron Sullivan is the real name of Henri Pichard, which is his sort of moniker when he started directing hardcore features. I discovered I do have at least one of his films in my collection because I have Mascara, which he co-directed with Roberta Findlay, which I've not watched yet. But this is sort of when it has his very first film on it, and then I think the one he did after, and then one that he did a few films later. Um, I I sort of hinted at this earlier, but I gotta be honest, this was the set that was the biggest chore to get through. Like it was pretty rough to be completely honest. Like let me click on it so I have the titles in front of me. Um Lust Weekend. I mean, it's fine for what it is. Like it delivers. Like there's I mean, when you bought a ticket to this sort of thing in 1968 or whatever, you just wanted to see naked women on screen, and it does deliver on that front. It's pretty much wall to wall that, but I don't know. It's just so light on really anything happening. And like it marketed itself as like this big like lurid exploration into like sexual torture and stuff, and it's just so tame. Which I guess is part of the constraints of the time, but like I don't know. It really was a chore to sit through, and it's clearly like an amateurish production, like a first attempt. Like there's not much going on in terms of interesting cinematography or writing or anything like that. So, I mean, that one's fine. The Bizarre Ones is really the one that um I would consider keeping this for or, ordering again sometime for if it was on a good price or whatever. Because like even though it is also kind of a mess and like pretty boring a lot of the time, there's also enough like just insane shit that like happens in there. And reading the booklet, he said that he wanted to go harder into like the BDSM stuff and like the kink stuff to like sort of entice people to come, but he had no experience with that whatsoever. So he just kind of had to make up what he thought somebody might find kinky, which includes cracking an egg open on a naked woman, which is fucking disgusting to me. But it's like, I don't know where else you're gonna see that, like it's at least interesting. Um, there's like a rape machine that like the characters build, and like it's not even clear to me that that's what it was until I read the booklet. I thought it was just like a proto like Sibian or something like
Okay.
something like that. I don't know, it's just so strange, and like there is at least more like weird stuff happening. Like there's a lot of whipping and there's a lot of tying of, people to posts and stuff like that, kidnapping. There's a lot of outdoor scenes, which is kind of unique and interesting. What else? Oh, there's a scene where like this woman ties another woman to a bed and starts feeding her like licorice from her mouth. It's just so strange. Like I don't know. It is bizarre. Like they weren't kidding with the title. It is bizarre. So that one I at least uh could get through in that just something completely unhinged was happening at least once every 10 minutes, you know? Um,
It
but
sounds
Scorpio
like,
70,
oh,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, it sounds like you get some of these vanity projects sometimes from, we always talk about like a Champagne and Bullets type, or maybe like an Action USA, or some of these pure like vanity projects. It almost sounds like this was him just like I don't for some reason he thought, okay, like maybe, maybe like kink stuff is gonna sell. And so
Hmm.
he then goes to make a kink film. And he starts to write the script and he's like, oh damn, I don't really understand like what to write. So he's just like sitting there with a pen imagining stuff. Is that
Uh-huh.
kind of how it feels?
That's how it feels, and I think that's explicitly what he said it is. Like he was just like, I mean, really, he was saying that like once he made his first feature and it was kind of a disaster, he kind of like thought of himself as a filmmaker. And so he's like, so if you're in New York and you're a filmmaker, you can't just be working on it. You have to like have another film ready to go, especially if you're in the like exploitation circuit because the turnaround is so fast. So he was like, I gotta, strike while the iron's hot, and before people forget about me, I gotta make something else. And so he made this, and it's clearly not super well thought out or anything, but like it delivers on, what it says on the tin, I guess, is like, oh, there's gonna be weird sex shit in here, and there is indeed. Um, Scorpio 70, I think, was his first attempt at like something higher budget with like a real plot and like actual dialogue, and it's shot in color. To me, this was the hardest one to get through because like I'm told there is a plot, but I had a hard time following it. Like it's a murder mystery with like six different people on a boat, and I can't keep any of them straight. And just like they're all, fucking each other, and I guess there's a murder and there's like flashbacks, and it's honestly it's so boring. Like I couldn't tell you what happens in this movie, and like the poster has like I mean Jennifer Wells is in it. She's great, so that's fun. But like the poster has her as like the body of a scorpion, and I'm like, I don't think this is actually going to be like a sexy creature feature. I highly doubt it, but wouldn't that be fun? It's definitely not. There's nothing even remotely approaching that. But um, I don't know. It was the longest one too. It was just kind of brutal, to be completely honest, sitting through that. Uh, but it's not like I regret watching it or anything. Like these are important. It's an important kind of. I really like your comparison to like watching vintage advertisements because like unless you grew up in that time, I don't know that anybody likes watching an old advertisement, but it tells you a lot about the culture. It tells you a lot about the product. It tells you a lot about the people that it was made by and for. And this is a similar thing where we're going to talk about some good films in a second, or at least one good film. But the ones that are bad, or at least not enjoyable to me personally, I still found something valuable in it. And I still, am glad I had the experience of going through it. And it was kind of fun to spend like what 3.5 hours with like a fledgling filmmaker's like amateur first attempts or whatever. Like I feel like you learned something from that. The features are not super stacked. There's like one interview with a producer that was fine.
I do want to add to that too, that watching something like that from that period, when you kind of when you see it, like for example the Michael Finley trilogy before that, which
Hmm.
kind of it falls in the same arena, right? It's black and white, they're roughies, much rougher,
Hmm.
I'm assuming, but the difference is like obviously you're looking at what Ron Sullivan looked at and was like, here's how I can make money doing this. So you get to see like what a business minded person's idea
Hmm.
of something like this is, who will probably let a little bit of their brain leak into that script, no pun intended. And like, whereas Michael Finley took a screwdriver, opened his head, and you're like, here's what's in my brain. And
Uh-huh.
it's not fucking
He's like
pretty at
a
all.
genuine auteur and like a fucked up guy, and like those movies kind of rule. Like, have you seen those
Right.
the Flesh trilogy?
Chris, have you seen him?
No, there's so much hardcore stuff I need to catch up on.
Oh, those aren't hardcore. Those are like those are similar to these. They're the
They're
It was
softcore, they're
the
roughies, yeah.
Okay, got
yeah,
it.
they were the first distrib picks. It was the first
Yeah, yeah,
set
yeah,
they
yeah,
put
yeah.
out.
It's the best release they've done so far, in my
No, I
opinion.
have
I
it.
kind of
Yes.
love those movies.
Really?
I do too, in like a very specific way because it really
Hmm.
is like a type of grime you can't manufacture and that you
Uh-huh.
can't like it's just such a it's that's a great time capsule in a very different way because that is someone who's giving you what they think what their idea of a good movie is for this for what
Mhm.
this is, you know?
That's
And
awesome.
Heather Drain does all the commentaries and the essay, and she's so enthusiastic about them, and it's like
Yeah.
it really is just great stuff. So that I think that one's still available, and the booklet is worth
I think that's
seeking out.
I think that's the one she said where she sat down and did all of them in
Uh-huh.
like a day or something.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, that's very exploitation based
Hardcore,
mindset right there. Yeah.
yeah. She's living into the spirit of it.
Yeah.
Um, the last thing I'll say about this release is that the booklet is excellent, and I will say this as many times as it takes before it stops, but I really hate that these essays are relegated to the limited edition only when they're in the perfect bound book. Like it's whatever. If you don't want to have like the whole, I get it, like the book itself is not going to fit in the Emery case or whatever, but you know, when you do a standard edition, you can have a trimmed down version of the booklet where it's just the essay, you know? Because like I mean, I'll just keep saying this. Like I don't understand why the writers of the text essays are relegated to a limited edition, but if somebody does a video essay on the disc, that gets to stay in the standard edition. Like I feel like they did the same amount of work and one of them is kind of relegated to either more or less important depending on how you look at it, I guess. But um for this one, it's about four, or three-fourths of the way sold out, and even though I think the packaging is a little bit extra for what is essentially one disc, you want it for that booklet. Because honestly, like this, I wouldn't have gotten much out of this at all without it. Like Ashley West writes the whole thing, and he just does an amazing job, like kind of taking you through the history of each film and the context in which they were created and why they were created and like how they were received and what the mentality was behind them. So that is honest. And I mean, you know what? The artwork is gorgeous. So if you're like a real slipcase freak, you know, you'll want it for that too. But so yeah, that's my recommendation for that.
It's interesting. He, ha- Eli, had you ever seen anything from Ron Sullivan before?
Not Ron Sullivan stuff, but I've seen Henri Pichard stuff. Particularly, I've seen Public Affairs. I've seen Mascara. I actually need to revisit them, but I'm trying to think what else I've seen from
Oh,
more
I have public
recently.
affairs too. I just haven't seen it yet. I was a
Um,
poli sci major in college, so that was like felt like it was made for me.
yeah, I think I've also seen you know what I watched there was a Quality X release Getting Personal which was
Hmm.
really
Mhm.
I thought great. That's a San Francisco porn and it's like it's one of the more downbeat porns. You know, it kind of the way Melusine, I mean I think most golden age porn it's either like if you're not just getting basically like a comp film that's just like a series of
Mhm.
sex scenes like say deep inside like the Deep Inside films where they have like just the most threadbare excuse to put together like some scenes. And those can be done well too, but you either have like really downbeat or really over the top comedy. And Getting
Okay,
Personal is like one of the more downbeat ones. It's like an
okay.
immigrant story
Oh,
in San Francisco, and I really enjoyed it. I was really surprised how good it was. I mean,
I will
I
have to
always
check
go in
that
hope.
out.
Yeah, highly recommend it.
Yeah, the one I was talking about earlier, her name is Lisa, is like that. I feel like those are often, and what I tell people like in my real life when they're like, "Why do you watch these movies?" or like, "Why are you reviewing these movies?" I'm like, "Well, here you go. Well, here's the thing. Like, I these are often like just a fast track to a budget for like filmmakers who actually do want to make a film and tell a story and whatever. And if you have like a pretty like dour drama and you can like add, I mean it's usually rape scenes because that's how you get your like conflict and your bad vibes and your I guess quote unquote sex scene all in one.
uh-huh.
um like there's a way in which you can turn your, you know, regular exploitation or drama or whatever script into something that will make its money back and will get greenlit by a producer, and that's by adding hardcore scenes in it. So you often get like real movies that just have these scenes in it, or you know, you often like Roberta Findlay is a great example of somebody who is just an incredible cinematographer, but she doesn't give a shit about these movies at all. She's just like, I just want to shoot cool shit, you know? And she does. And so her movies look great all the time, you know?
And absolutely. And I would even say that it ends up the hardcore elements are almost used against the viewer depending on the movie. Through the Looking Glass is a great example of that. Like none of
Hmm.
that is I'm just trying to picture someone going into a fucking porn theater on 42nd Street to
Uh-huh.
get off and walk in and you're watching this incredibly riveting, like a really powerful story about cycles of sexual abuse. I mean, that was without hype. I'm not exaggerating. If I had to make, I didn't make like a top five list of my favorite releases from last year from Vinegar Syndrome and Melusine, but if that's not number one, it'll be number two. It's like right up there. I thought it was such a
It's
incredible
top tier
watch.
for sure.
Yeah, and when you're watching it, you are like, who is this for? Actually, that's not a specific
It's
type of
so
cinephile.
deranged.
Yeah, and even when you watch like A Woman's Torment, I think that's Roberta Findlay prefers the R-rated cut, and not to get too far on a tangent, that's one thing I do miss. I do like when, and I know we'll get to that with Alexandra, but like, I love when they restore the softcore cuts of these as well,
Yeah.
because even if you excuse me, they're not always entirely different movies. They usually just will sometimes get rid of the hardcore shots. Sometimes it does redefine the movie's tone and feel. And when you watch something like A Woman's Torment or even something like Thriller, A Cruel Picture, when you see these hardcore scenes in these like really, really downbeat tales, it actually makes it grimier in a way that, depending on the viewer, how you've oriented yourself, it could make it a more powerful watch, which in my opinion
Yeah.
it does. But I get that that's not for everybody.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's how I felt about Thriller when I watched both cuts. I was like, I like the hardcore one better because it feels grosser. It feels like you really sit with like what's happening to her in a more direct and explicit fashion, and it's not implied, you know, in the way it is in the
100%.
softcore cut. I prefer it, but
Yeah,
I know
same,
that the
same.
mileage will vary for people on that sort of thing.
We can guess which camp Gaspar Noé would be in.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
I still remember getting out of the theater in like 2001 or two or whatever, watching Irreversible, and just like I always went with a friend. Shout out Steve if you're listening. But we would just driving home and like it was mostly silence, just being like, oh, I mean, we talked about it for days afterwards. But like I love that movie, but that's like that really hits.
Yeah.
I saw that on a matinee on opening day. We had one. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, and
Okay.
originally, and we have one art house theater. Well, there were a few, but there was kind of like a central one. And
Mhm.
I went to go see it on opening day at 1 in the afternoon, and there were 12 people, and it's mostly a matinee crowd, is mostly senior citizens in Florida, especially. And
Uh-huh.
I think when the movie was over, it was five people left, including
Uh-huh.
myself. There were
Uh-huh.
like seven walkouts. Right, the
Uh-huh.
first scene had two people walk out, I remember. And then obviously the very famous scene with Monica Bellucci,
Mhm.
that's where the rest of the audience clocked out.
Yeah.
That the ones who did leave.
Yeah. I actually agree with, although I haven't seen a lot of the movies y'all are talking about, I agree with the sentiment behind this though. I think like this is something that Scooter McCrae does very well as well in his movies. And like if you show the explicit content, or it doesn't have to be hardcore stuff, but like if you show the violence in a more violent way, or show the sex in a more violent way, you are forced to wrestle with the impact of what you're watching as opposed to being able to kind of escape from it. And I do think it makes for a bigger impact on the watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when it looks grimier, or when it has that specific, when they're shot on
Yeah,
16 and 35,
yeah.
when you watch something more skillfully now on like a, and I keep kind of going back to this, but like that digital sheen, it kind of, sometimes you're like, why does it look like you like it? I don't know. It doesn't hit the same way.
Hmm, that's a good point. Um, well, what's next?
Let's move on to The Passions of Carol, which is one of the most bizarre films I've ever seen in
Damn
my
it, I
life, I
really wish I
think.
got a chance to watch it.
I cannot wait to talk about this. Please take the reins, but oh my God.
Sure. Okay, so I watched this with a friend of mine, and this was his first hardcore feature ever. And I was like, I'm just gonna warn you, you never know what you're gonna get. This might be a great gateway, entryway into like sort of what you can expect with these, or it might be completely bizarre. It was definitely completely bizarre. And he was like, I don't know what I thought of that. I have no gauge for this whatsoever. And I'm like, to be honest, I barely do too, and I've seen quite a few of these. Like that was not a great introductory film. So this is I guess it's you would consider it mid-budget for this sort of genre, but I think it was made for like $12,000. So like very low budget, pornographic adaptation of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, which I think most everybody on the planet Earth is pretty familiar with. So I guess spoilers for Charles Dickens, but if you're familiar with it, we'll proceed.
It's our chance to talk about the Muppets on a porn episode, though, because
Okay,
at a
okay. So
minimum,
you
you've
say
seen the
that
Muppets
because
one,
that's
right?
one of my favorite films of all time. And I actually watched that a few days before this, and I had listened to the audiobook in between. And so I was pretty familiar with this story, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm excited to see how you translate that.
Yeah, yeah.
At this point, it's been a month or so, and so I don't remember the specifics, but I just keep remembering every single scene was so baffling to me. And I was just like, I feel like there's a pretty straightforward way to translate this story into something pornographic, and each decision he makes is like not even something that would occur to me if I was tasked with writing this. Like it's so strange. And like okay, I think maybe to kind of synthesize why I found this so baffling. So like at the end of the film, and like I guess I'm gonna spoil it, but like it's like at the end of the film, she gets to the Ghost of Christmas Future, and like there's so many ways you could take that for like this is where you're headed if you don't stop with this like greed, with this like maybe sexual exploitation that you're doing, with this like worker exploitation that you're doing. There's ways to show that that makes sense, I guess. And like it's just kind of it just shows her being like a full service sex worker like in New York, and then that's it. And I'm just like, okay, and then what? And then that was it. And I'm like, is that really that different from what you've been doing so far? Like, is that really the worst punishment you could think of? Like, I was so confused. Just like, I don't know.
That's where the
Um,
budget ran out. That's clearly where
mhm,
they ran out of money. When it
uh-huh.
gets something like that, I feel like that's always they're like, all right, well, we got $1,000 in the bank. What can we do? Well, we got this motel room we can check out here.
Like, I don't know. It was just like it seemed fully consensual, like she was just doing a job and getting paid for it, and the guy was like not particularly gross or like awful to her or whatever. Just like, is that it? I don't know. And then there's a bizarre scene where she like
Uh,
seduces some childhood friends and then like like they start sodomizing each other with a doll. It's so strange. Like I don't know. And then there was just little things like that that would happen. I mean, every single scene in this was so I did not find this erotic in the slightest. I found it baffling and like also kind of there were parts of it that were really beautiful. Like it's shot on a soundstage and some of the color grading and the sort of the lighting is really quite beautiful. There's an excellent essay in the Blu-ray by the director kind of telling the story of how he made this, and he's a good writer. Like it's actually quite gripping, and I read it all pretty fast. He talks about how this is the first time he actually wrote a script and he actually wrote dialogue for actors, and like I think Carter Stevens was the one that would like came to him and was like literally crying. It was like, "Hey man, I can't do this. Like nobody's asked me to do lines before. Like I don't want to let you down." And he's like, "It's fine. Just you'll be fine." And it was not fine. Like he couldn't do it. But like um I was following a thread with that somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. Um just baffling. Baffling
well,
stuff. And I did enjoy it, but it yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'll let you take over.
so I didn't see this on Blu-ray. I got to see this about a year and a half ago on 35 with an audience.
Oh, wow.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, the New Beverly showed it. And it's funny, I forgot to plug this up top when you were asking me kind of about my journey. I have been for the last half year or so. I've been hosting and what I've been calling Pussycat Theater Night across from the old Pussycat in West Hollywood. I'm showing softcore cuts of Golden Age hardcore films. The
Awesome.
reason but it's at a dinner thing. I'll kind of get into it in a little bit, but this was I remember when I watched this, I was like, I would love to show something like this to an audience, and it was showing at the New Beverly. It was a midnight screening the week before Christmas. I believe they actually showed the Muppet Christmas Carol as the afternoon matinee, which would have made for an incredible day at the movies. I wish I had gone to that, but it with an audience, all the scenes you're talking about, you like laid the groundwork perfectly for exactly what I wanted to say, which was that like when that doll scene happened, people were losing their minds because it's just like you're sitting with 120 people watching this, and you're like, what? How the fuck did this play in a theater for people who wanted to watch porn? But maybe it goes back to
Mhm.
what you're saying, Chris. Like, there's always been these fetishes that they're really, you know, you can find this now. I'm sure there's someone on OnlyFans you can commission to do this, or
Uh-huh.
someone who just makes it, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
watching it with an audience was so incredible because there's also just stuff you get that kind of, I hate to say it, like is stereotypically true of when you're watching something really low rent, which is that, or low budget, which was there's a shot, I believe, in the first sex scene with Tubular Bells, which is the Sean Costello touch. He has, I believe, multiple films where Bells plays during a sex scene.
Uh-huh. That's right. I
Um,
forgot about that.
there is a shot in there. It's a very long static shot of the threesome that's happening, and you can see a
Mhm.
crew member sitting in the shot in the mirror. He's just sitting there watching it, and everybody sees him. And then suddenly, about 30 seconds into the shot, he knows he's in it, and you see him get up and go. And people started like it, that genuinely got an applause break from what I remember with that audience. Because it's so noticeable, but like that's also part of the charm, obviously, when you're watching
Mhm.
something like this. And yeah, it when a lot of people go to those, because they've shown a few hardcore things at the New Beverly over the past couple years.
That's fun. I
And
didn't know they did that.
yeah, and I believe they I remember Joe Rubin introduced when they did Farewell Scarlet.
Mm.
And again, that also played really well with the crowd, especially on all nights on a fucking Monday. But watching Passions of Carol that way, it's the only reason I skipped the Blu-ray, because I'm like, you know what? I feel like I experienced it the best way possible, and it is a tough. It's not something you recommend. You know, these movies ultimately, in terms of recommending them, most people who are shopping on the site have a pretty good idea of what's for them and what's not.
Mhm.
Uh, Especially when they try to jump in. Letterboxd is very good for this. You really can get an idea when people watch this stuff who's reviewing it on the terms they should be reviewing it on, and who's like, oh yeah, I actually didn't realize this is what watching a porno in the 70s
Mhm.
would. This is, I wouldn't get anything out of it, you know. So, but yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you were saying. Like, it's not an erotic film, but I'm very glad I watched it. Even if I had watched it at home, I would have been
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is exactly what I go for when I kind of go diving into this world. That's kind of these are the waters I like to swim in.
Yeah, even though the experience watching it was often frustrating because like to me like the move in translation from like Dickens to hardcore was so obvious and he just wouldn't take it over and over and over again. Like I'm so
Right.
glad it exists. Like it's so strange and singular and bizarre. I will also say I'm really glad this release exists because there's a commentary with Joe Rubin and the director, and I learned looking this stuff up afterwards, the director died in 2023, I think.
Oh
So
wow.
it's really
That's right.
great that we managed to get a commentary and an essay out of him, and he's just like a really charming, interesting person to listen to. Some of my favorite moments from that commentary is when Tubular Bells started playing, and he was just like, "Oh man, this is shameless. Like, I can't believe I did this. This is fucked up." And like, during the doll scene, fucking like Joe Rubin is like, "So, where'd you come up with this? Like, whose idea was this?" He was like, "Me? I don't know. It's from my fucked up mind. What do you want from me?" Like, he calls himself a degenerate like constantly. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. Yeah, I don't know. Is a very entertaining commentary to listen to. Uh, one of my favorites I've heard in recent times. Um, I'm looking at the slipcover artwork. I think people have accused this of being AI, and I gotta say, it does look a little bit like it might be, but there is a credited artist, and I don't know. Honestly, I like the colors and I kind of like the vibe of it, but um, I don't know. Something to consider, I guess. Uh, yeah.
I don't think this is AI, because this looks like if so this was a DVD upgrade, and
Hmm.
it just seems like I get what they're saying in terms of like it's just overlaying colors, I guess, and
Uh-huh.
over what
It's
is the
like,
poster of the movie,
yeah.
but it doesn't feel unnatural to me or anything. Maybe my eyes aren't, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I
the
don't think
lines are
it's
just kind of weirdly soft in some parts, but it does kind of just look like it was like an illustrative tracing
I I
of the
see what
original
you're saying,
poster.
Celeste. Like especially if you look at the woman's shoulder, it looks a little bit like the shoulder and neck. It looks a little superimposed, I think. But I'm not going to accuse Rich Long of being
Yeah,
Vinegar Syndrome's AI agent. But
yeah.
it could just be like colored pencil or something as well. I don't know. But I
Mm-hmm.
do kind of see what you're talking about if you look at her shoulder, especially.
I do think it's a good primer on like what the color palette of the film looks like and everything, like the clock tower in the background and everything. It looks pretty, and so does the film. So
I have a particular interest when low budget films use things like smoke and shadows to kind of cover the budget a little bit. I think it's really interesting when filmmakers do that. So I think I would like the aesthetic of this film just from the screenshots I've seen,
yeah.
um, and it seems like a cultural curio for sure.
It is it is the look of it from because I you know the print that I saw was obviously a print
Hmm.
from back then. It's not a new print, so it has this hazy look. Does the movie have that, or was it from just the fading from the print? Like, does the movie pop a lot more on Blu-ray?
Um, I don't know. I'd have to see to compare. I mean, there's definitely a lot of smoke. There's definitely a lot of fog machines going on. There's definitely like a very artificial look to it on account of the sound stages and the heavy lighting. But yeah, it looks pretty crisp. I don't know, like the restoration is pretty good.
Great.
The sound, there was one reel that apparently had some real damage to it in terms of the sound, and they did their best to clean it up, but it sounds kind of janky. But other than that, um, I wanted to last point on this, and then we can move on. Is in the commentary, the Ghost of Christmas Present is played by this very sort of histrionic, sort of effeminate gay man. And he was talking about how like everybody loves this part and like this always gets laughs. And he was like, yeah. And then I heard a few years later that he was arrested for like torturing and murdering somebody in like an S&M scene or something. I was like, what the fuck? Like I tried looking that up. I couldn't find anything, but like,
Whoa.
Jesus Christ, Like he's like, yeah, he was such a nice guy. I didn't think he was capable of something like that. I'm like, okay, cool. It's just the insane shit you hear when you
Yeah,
look into these productions and everything.
No, that's what I love. I mean, the backstories behind this are just fascinating. Almost with every kind of major movie in this world, it seems like there's always something really interesting going on.
Hmm.
for sure.
Is there one
Okay.
more?
One more, Alexandra. This was my
Oh, that's right.
favorite of the
Okay.
three. I actually think this is genuinely a very good movie. I will also say I was watching this with a friend of mine as well, and we were both pretty confused at different parts in this, and I was like, okay, I think this is clearly like a rough draft that just went straight into production in terms of the script, but so it's a little rough around the edges and some parts don't make sense, but it is clearly higher budget. Like there's a great interview with the producer on here where he gets into um yeah, the fact that they had a higher budget to work with and that they got to hire more or less professionals for this stuff. And I mean, it looks like a real movie. Like it looks great. The cinematography is really good. It's lit really well. Like these are not givens in this sort of genre, Like it looks very professional. And honestly, the actors are all pretty good. Like they're asked to do a lot, both physically and in their dialogue. And like I think they're all pretty good. Um, it's based off of some pre-existing work. I don't remember if it's a movie or a play or something. Um,
Oh, yes, it's I'll pull it up while you're because
yeah,
I
yeah,
actually
yeah.
remember it too, and
Hmm.
it's a Joseph Mankiewicz movie, and I'm just blanking on which one
Okay,
it
yeah,
is.
yeah. So it's
But
a
yeah,
film.
yeah,
It's three letters to a woman or something like that.
yes, yeah, three letters to I want to say possibly Eve.
Yeah, something like that. Apparently nobody noticed when it came out that it was just kind of a soft adaptation of that. But
Oh, a letter to three wives. I'm sorry,
A Letter to
that's
Three
what it was.
Wives.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So it's that. I guess that explains the framing device where it's like a woman, I don't know, is like kind of narrating from like a God's eye view with like her current partner or something, and like it cuts in and out in ways that are confusing. It's just strange. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's just good. Like I think like by the time I was finished, I was like, I actually think that was a pretty good movie, like just straight up. I really enjoyed it. And it does have the hardcore and the softcore version. I skipped around in the softcore version just to kind of see any differences, and the sex scenes are a lot shorter, but the runtime is longer, and so I didn't catch which. I mean, I think there were like full scenes that are just in there that aren't in the hardcore cut. Um, as I was watching this, I realized I don't actually know the answer to this question. So let me ask you, because you seem to be more knowledgeable about this stuff. what is the reason for creating a softcore edit as well? Like I assume it's for a different circuit of theaters or for a different something or another, like for a
Yes.
different audience.
Yeah, so it depends on the movie because the 70s and the 80s kind of had different, well, yeah, definitely in the 70s, particularly in the late 70s, there was an attempt to make a lot of crossover because
Hmm.
like stuff that would play midnight movies at like not necessarily college campuses but places where people would be more receptive to that like Cafe Flesh style.
Mm-hmm.
But with this one in particular, they actually made it for the cable market because Cinemax and Showtime, like all those
Okay.
channels,
Hmm.
started realizing that after 11 o'clock, this stuff would get higher ratings. So, like before they started making originals for those, like the Bedroom Eyes movies and like that kind of softcore stuff. And
Okay.
shout out to We Kill for Love. That has a great. You can really chart the history of that. Um,
I
that
have
kind of
that one. I haven't
market.
watched it yet.
Yeah, it's very very long, so you can and you can
Yeah.
break it up because it's like a video essay, but highly recommend it for that reason. That said, with this one, it definitely was made for the like the late night cable where they could show nudity, but they obviously couldn't show hardcore.
Sure.
And
Okay.
I,
That makes
I
sense.
watched I watched both of them. Admittedly, when I went to watch the hardcore one, I ended up watching it more passively than the because I actually put on the softcore cut first.
Hmm.
Admittedly, because I wanted to see if I could program it for the movie night I host now. And when I watched the two cuts, what I did notice was it took a lot longer for to get to in between the sex scenes. There's a lot more broken up and there is a little more plot. I can't remember the key. There is like a key scene
Hmm.
somewhere, I want to say in the middle and towards the end where the people involved, like the God voice, if I remember correctly in the hardcore cut, they show up at some point at the end, right? Or there's something where there's like you kind of see where they're hosting from, right? Am I
I
remembering
think
that
so.
correctly? Yeah, if I remember correctly in the softcore cut, that is completely excised. Like the voice is still there and there's still a lot of that going on, but when it leads to that final kind of the finale with the movie they're watching on the TV, that is completely cut. There
Hmm.
all you're seeing is their reaction shots, which
Okay.
depending
Yeah. Yeah.
on
Yeah.
how invested you get in the story, that may be underwhelming or could be very funny.
Hmm. Yeah, I was having a hard time pinpointing because I think it's like a decent amount longer. And if you're cutting out sex scenes, like you're obviously going to be adding something else to make up for that and then some. And I couldn't quite figure out what it was. It must just be like less edited, I guess, like these scenes just last longer and have more lines or whatever.
For sure. And it's not boring. I actually thought I
Mhm.
agree with you. I think it's a good movie on both terms. I think it works. I think its R-rated cut actually works really well. It's particularly in the back half because I found that watching the hardcore version, and this is probably also because I'd watched them so not exactly back to back, but within a short
Mhm.
amount of time, my stamina was flagging a little more. And I'm sure if I
Sure.
watched it the other way around, I could probably say the same thing if I watched the softcore cut
Hmm.
second. But I was never bored by it. I actually never reached for my phone. I completely enjoyed it. I think also for me because I know who these actors are, kind of getting to see them play in this kind of field, like where they kind of get to enjoy the acting part of it more because they're also very charming. I mean, you just really get there's a reason why certain performers were a lot more showed up in the more dramatic stuff in Roommates or whatever other big kind of landmark movies from that period because they were very good at playing to their strengths in these movies. And I think Alexandra is a good example of that. Everybody's having so much fun, but they're not phoning it in either.
Hmm. Yeah, I think if I ever, I mean, I'm sure I will at some point come back to this and rewatch it. I'll watch the soft cut the whole way through and see how that um, kind of plays different to me in my memory or whatever. Um,
Yeah, and it feels, by the way, one thing I want to add, it totally feels like Patient Zero for what softcore movies look like. Like it has the
mhm.
music's a little, that the music plays a little cornier. The sensuality of it feels like it's for softcore. So even if they're cutting around it or being a little more like intentional with that, it I don't know back then if it felt cornier or if you were just like, oh great, I can watch this while everyone in the house is sleeping. Like you
Hmm.
always wonder, like speaking of artifactually, like how are people approaching this movie when they're watching it in 1984 on a 24-inch Zenith TV in the basement or wherever they're watching it.
Yeah. As I'm thinking about it, because I was thinking like it kind of occurred to me because I never really asked this question. I was like, why would you have a softcore cut of this? Like the people who want to see this want to see those parts, Like it seems strange to me, like the person who actually would go to see something like this for the plot. I mean, that's like us in retrospect and like as like a historical thing, but like at the time, if that's like your option, like that's sort of the reason why you would go. But I actually do see an intersection of people that would go to a regular theater and see an advertisement for something racier with like softcore scenes in it and be like, "Ooh, yeah, that sounds like fun. I'd like to see that." But find themselves they would think themselves above actually walking into like a hardcore theater, right?
For
So that
sure.
makes sense
Yes,
to me.
absolutely. And also, I don't know, this part's speculation. I never even thought to look into this, but I would imagine also in certain cities that they probably had a lot more because a lot of the laws for porn are based on morality laws, right? They're like local.
Right.
So I can imagine showing this in the middle of like, Wyoming. You're probably
Yeah.
not going to have a porn theater. You're probably going to need to have an R-rated cut, even if it's playing
You're
at a
so
seedier
right. I
place.
didn't think about that either because like New York City you could get away with that, but for a long time they were producing these films straight up illegally, and so you would definitely
Yeah,
open up your market quite a bit if you had a literally like a legal cut of the film, right? So,
Well, I
totally.
never the whole I don't want to get too far on this tangent, but the whole like Cinemax phenomenon is fascinating to me because I remember growing up, I saw so many Zalman King movies, the
Hmm.
Red Shoe Diaries and stuff, and like honestly, like they were always to my 11 and 12-year-old self, they were always a little bit disappointing because it was never as much as I wanted. But like there's a massive market for that. I mean, I
mhm.
don't know, that guy's retired very well just from making these kind of suggestive movies with a little bit of nudity in it.
Oh, for sure. I think part of it's because obviously the erotic thrillers that starred, Fatal Attraction,
Hmm.
Jagged
Basic
Edge,
Instinct, huh?
Basic Instinct,
Hmm.
like a lot of them are mimicking that movie. In fact, very rarely do they not mimic that movie. It's
Right.
an outlier if they don't. But like, Zalman King was one of the few where it kind of was doing his own thing,
Yeah,
and there's a great Karina Longworth covered that movie, I believe, in You Must Remember This. There's an erotic '90s and erotic '80s series on that podcast, and I would say they're very essential actually
that's awesome.
for that. Yeah, it goes really well with the We Kill for Love.
Fantastic. Um, well, I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to talk about. We've covered some of the new releases. We're talking about them. And obviously next month we're going to get into some of the January releases, depending on what you can get in, Celeste. Is there anything else that we should talk about before we get into the mainline stuff? Is there anything else on y'all's mind today?
Um, yeah, there's two things I wanted to mention.
Yeah, please.
One thing is the Melusine Media Club.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
There's the Vinegar Syndrome Media Club, which, is where you can get like exclusive slipcovers or things you can cash in your points. They have started one on Melusine, and they've actually had their version of that there for a little while. I know that Jess Franco double, the one with was it Brigitte Lahaie?
Bridget LaHaye, yep.
Like,
I'm
yeah,
looking at it right now.
you could get that for
Le
your
Brûle
points.
de Bar 2 and Dark Mission.
That's right. Which are oh boy, those are rough watches.
They are rough. I think they're both on one of them's on YouTube and the other one somebody uploaded on Plex or something and I watched them both and man, I did not feel compelled to spend 3,000 points on that.
Totally. Yeah, but they recently put a movie called Hot Summer in the City,
Uh-huh.
which I did watch. So if you guys are okay with it, I'd love to talk about it just for two
Oh, I'd love to
minutes.
hear about it because I think it's on YouTube, right? And it's
Yes, it's also, I believe,
okay.
let's be honest, a lot of these are on tube sites. They're not
Uh-huh.
hard to find,
Yeah,
but
uh-huh.
pornographically speaking. But that said, I this also, and of all the New Bev screenings, Quentin Tarantino owns a print of this. As far as from what I have read, he is has spoken about this movie positively several times.
Mhm.
But they did a midnight screening a few years ago. I missed it, and I was really kicking myself because I just, even if it's something that's disreputable, which I guess for people listening, if they don't know what this is, it is supposedly directed by Gail Palmer, who directed Candy Goes to Hollywood, and which worked with Carol Connors a lot, and among others. And she supposedly directed this, but she's later said that she didn't. She just helped get it made or something. But it is a film about a group of black men in Detroit who are trying to start they're basically militants and they're starting a race war, and they kidnap a white woman who's just walking on the street after having an argument with her boyfriend and catching her mom being double teamed by two guys. They kidnap her and make her a sex slave. And this barely clocks in an hour. And I thought it was part of they're giving it away. You can't buy the movie, right? You have to use you have to use 3,000 points to buy the Blu-ray. And I thought, well, they must be doing that because it's maybe the transfer, they didn't have good elements. Maybe, it's just, even by Melusine standards, maybe it's something that could be a bit racy, I thought, no pun
Right.
intended. But turns out the reason that you have to buy it that way, well, it's not buying it, you're redeeming it, is because clearing the music rights for this movie would be, I don't know what they went through for looking for Mr. Goodbar, but that is probably child's play compared to what it would take to clear the
Oh,
music rights
really?
for this movie. Yeah, it is. It has one of the, I'm not joking when I say the soundtrack is full of fucking bangers. It is, but set to the most vile scenes you can imagine.
Yeah.
There's a scene where this white woman that and it's funny because we're talking about this movie and how uncomfortable it is, but it really, I use the term patient zero. Um, a lot of like cuckolding interracial porn, especially in like the early 2000s and late 2000s, this kind of laid the groundwork for it, I'd argue. Like it's no more
Yeah.
uncomfortable than what you'd find in those kinds of scenes
Oh,
with
okay.
those like awfully named movies and sites that still exist actually because there's clearly a market for it. The difference though is that this is again just a very unappealing movie in terms of like what you're watching. But to go back to the soundtrack, you're watching a scene where a white woman's getting whipped by a black guy while Good Vibrations from the Beach Boys plays, and then it fades to Everlasting Love while she's having sex with two guys. It's like that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other good songs. You
Yeah.
can find the soundtrack on IMDb. um,
Crazy.
and it's transferred from the negative. It looks about as good as they could get probably. I imagine that negative wasn't well taken care of because
Yeah.
it definitely has some. It definitely still has some wear and tear on it, but it's shot in Detroit as well, so it's a regional sexploitation porno, and yeah, when I was finished watching it, and I don't say this lightly, I very rarely feel the need to take a shower after. That was in a bad way.
Mhm.
It definitely is not a pleasant watch. It's as repellent as its reputation suggests, but hey, it's being preserved. Whether I guess that's up to the viewer to whether or not that's something worth a watch, but it's not, it almost doesn't feel competently made either, and it has like a particularly really uncomfortable passage with like a mentally handicapped black guy having anal sex with the white woman, and um that's
Gosh.
yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Actually, that's the perfect note to kind of leave it on to decide whether or not you want to watch it. I haven't met anybody who's thought this was a good watch. I've talked to a few people who saw it, and I heard when it screened at the New Bev, there were quite a few walkouts, to say the least.
Well, other than Quentin Tarantino,
Right, right. No, he stayed
who
till the end,
apparently
for
is a
sure.
sick freak and loves this shit, which is
Yeah.
the least surprising thing I think I've heard about him.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if there's something wrong with my brain, but everything you just said made me want to watch this like more. I'm just like I'm always looking for like stuff that feels like it's pushing the envelope and will make me feel bad.
For
Because
sure.
I guess there's
For
something wrong with my brain. But yeah.
No, no, that's exactly what pulled me into it. I was like, "Oh my God, I have to hear about all of this." I didn't know much about the music rights thing. I thought it was
Mhm.
like maybe one song. And when I started watching the movie, it kicks right off with some real let's just call the music very copyrighted.
Mhm.
And it just
Turbo copyright.
yeah, for an
Fucking Disney
hour
tracks back to back.
back to back to back. Yeah. And like watching it, I had the same thought. I'm like, you know what? I can't say I enjoyed myself, but yeah, this is why we play the game, right? In
Mhm.
some ways. And so whether or not that's like worth the kind of, cashing in your points and,
Yeah.
and again, it's something you can find online first. I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing if your mileage, because like
Yeah.
you said, your mileage will vary. You can always watch it a little bit. Hell, some VS titles, people will go on Tubi or wherever they license them out to
Yeah,
just to
yeah,
see
yeah.
if it's like something they want to watch at first, just without the Tubi ads. And
I
so I
mean, since they're not even selling this and like they got to do this on the down low anyway, I would be interested if somebody has a rip of this transfer anywhere and we could see the cleaned up version, but I've already found the I did a quick Google while you were talking and I found it, so I might watch it. But yeah, I'm really glad that you brought this up because I completely forgot about it and I would not have had enough points for it. Nor would I have probably used it for this since it is free online. And so I'm glad that you were able to cover it because it was probably in the same time frame and I completely forgot about it. So
Absolutely. And also just for people asking, there are no features on it. It's just the movie
mhm.
with just the like it literally will you just jump right into it. There's nothing else there. But I
I
think that
wonder
it is oh, go ahead.
I wonder what else is in because they have just the most insane vault. And I'm sure they're
Yeah.
sitting on so much stuff where they're like, this we can't put this out. But we have it, and now they have a way to kind of get around it. I'm curious what else might creep out, you know?
Same. Yeah. I'm hoping it's stuff that like where it's kind of similar to what was the mainline release they put out last year? That Nick Millard double where it's like I think Criminally Insane,
Oh
where
yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
it's these
Satan's Black Wedding too.
yes, great.
I
I
like
thought
those a
that was
lot.
I love those. Yeah, and but you know, watching them, you're watching movies that were they had to do so much work just to restore them to what you
Hmm.
saw on your TV. And sometimes I want something like that in grindhouse mode. I don't get me wrong, I love getting my money's worth on my OLED and like seeing colors pop on high Acacia Lee double or whatever else is, you know, whatever else they're putting out. But sometimes I do want something that feels like they got the reels out of a dumpster and just scanned it directly. Like there's something about seeing it in that mode sometimes too that kind of
Like
adds to the experience.
the Easter egg on a corruption. Last House
That's
on Dead End
right.
Street. That was one of the
That's right.
grimiest viewing experiences I've ever had. I felt fucking gross after that finished.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a. I need to revisit that. I haven't
It's
seen
so
it
good.
since I saw it on VHS. I remember really liking it. Yeah. I guess the last thing before you get into mainlines, that actually is the perfect segue to the other thing. You're asking the stuff to talk about. I guess one thing I think people listening would want to know is like where to start. I did put together, and I don't know, Celeste, if you want to jump in on this too. Just I think a good list of stuff that like is good entry level and good like
Oh, cool.
you know, advanced level
Yeah,
and
I'd love
kind
to
of
hear it.
intermediate. Yeah, so some of them we've talked about. I mean, I think for anybody who wants to see like just a great film, I think Through the Looking Glass and A Woman's
Mhm.
Torment are that's top tier right there. I think another artifactual one that kind of is in conversation with Hot Summer in the City is Joy. Have you had a
Oh
chance to see
man,
that?
I that one had the craziest slipcover, and I was just like, I don't know about this. And so, but it has stayed a morbid curiosity since then, and I'm probably gonna watch it at least at some point.
Highly recommend it. I'll just I was just gonna kind of list the titles, but for this one, I do think it just needs a little context, which is just that it's a parody of Death Wish that came out a few
Mm,
like in
hmm.
'79, and the idea is Sharon Mitchell plays a high school senior, or I believe a high school senior who gets sexually assaulted at her house. She's a virgin, and halfway through the assault, she starts to really like it, and it scares the two assailants off when they see that she's enjoying it. They run away, and she starts just any guy on the street. She just starts jumping their bones, and it creates a citywide movement of women just cornering guys and fucking them and well, I guess raping them would be the right
Yeah.
term, but it's considered like a vigilante act, and there's a very uncomfortable scene where a black cop tries to straighten her out, and it even ends just like Death Wish, where she ends up in Chicago, but instead of firing a fake pistol off like Bronson does, she fucks four guys in the men's bathroom, and it's just. I think it's like a great example of what we were talking about with Artifact, where it's this movie that clearly, even today, I think is transgressive for a lot of the
Hmm.
wrong reasons, but you'll find a lot of stuff in there that I think you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is actually very clever, especially for its time,
Yeah.
as because it's still doing some stuff there that's like you could say is relatively progressive. And
Maybe
it's a
instead of
beautiful
rape and revenge, it's rape as revenge. It's a new
right,
genre. You know what I'm saying?
exactly, exactly, and like seeing seeing it this way too, because I did try to watch it online to see how I'd feel about it, and every tube site, it looked so shitty. And when you turn on the Blu-ray, it really is like a revelation.
Mhm.
And Sharon Mitchell's interview on there is great. Um, so yeah, I think that's a good intermediate one. And then I think you had mentioned Corruption. I think is like when
Mhm.
I think of Vinegar Syndrome's like Peakorama or any of their porn, that's like right at the top as well. Um, Sex World, great. I
Yep.
think that's just a great. That's probably the more accessible. That Blonde Ambition, um,
Yep.
and I'm forgetting one other one from the four. Oh, I think Stiff Competition is also really fun. And depending on your, I guess for the viewer, it's like one thing that's unfortunately unavoidable with a lot of these is Ron Jeremy's in them. You're just going to see him.
Right. Uh-huh.
Sorry, it sucks. But a lot of the Cecil Howard stuff's great. One that you've talked about before, Chris, that I think is also just a really fun one is Bat Pussy. That's a group watch.
Nice.
You get some friends together,
Oh,
you
that's
get
a
fucking.
party movie.
It's a party movie through and through. And then for like more adventurous people on the out of print side, a movie that I saw a couple years ago, and it's not, it's funny. A lot of the stuff on the secondary market can be expensive, but this one hasn't been as much. Is A Labor of Love, which is a documentary that VS restored very, very early on in their like really early days, about a crew that thought they were going to shoot a narrative film, and it turns out the financiers want them to shoot a porn film, and the cameramen, well, the documentarians, they have unfettered access to the whole thing, and
Okay.
it's barely an hour long. It's like an hour and 10 minutes. I don't want to spoil any of it. It
Mm.
really has to be seen to be believed, like what happens with people who none of these people are porn performers, and who gets roped into having to do certain scenes when the guys can't perform. Of course, an overly confident actor who can't get it up. The director who like is just so uncomfortable with what he's making. It's a really, really great film, and it's really beautifully restored. The fact that like in 2011 they were doing, like Criterion level work really speaks to, I think, the company's like mission statement. And then I think that was it. Yeah. Oh, and obviously the shot on video stuff. I got to give a shout out to like the Charles Pinion stuff. Red Spirit
Mhm.
Lake is a great watch. Red
That
Lips,
movie's
and
fucking crazy, dude.
it's so crazy. But it feels so genuine in its punkness.
Yeah,
That
it's
that
great.
I don't know what that term means anymore sometimes, but that I think is a great example of it. And like, Scooter McRae's stuff, particularly Shatter Dead and Red Lips, which was, I believe, Donald Farmer. Those also have great features where they talk about like at the time doing the kind of transgressive stuff they were doing,
Yeah.
and alongside like new interviews. So it's yeah, those are, I think, all the ones that are really, really worthwhile that are in print still. There's other ones like Barber Broadcast and Opening of Misty Beethoven that are also like must watches, but I suspect those will get Melusine
I
releases
think they're gonna
because
get re-released, yeah. I
for
watched Barber
sure.
Broadcast recently, actually, and I really enjoyed it. It's
Oh,
just
good.
really beautifully shot.
Yeah, that's Radley Metzger who just had the
Hmm.
image. And I briefly mentioned, showing the softcore cuts of these films. So I showed that one. That was the first film I showed was Sex World, and it played great to the crowd. But the reason I want to talk about Barbara Broadcast and showing that one was that film had gotten rescheduled on the calendar, and so we showed it the week of Labor Day, like that Wednesday, and only two people showed up that had made reservations, and the other people who came into, because it's at a restaurant that has a projector and a cannabis lounge, and a few people
Hmm.
showed up to eat and smoke, and the host working said, "Hey, we're going to be showing the softcore cut of this adult film. If you want to sit and watch it, if you want, we'll move you, no problem." So they were like, "Yeah, you know what? We'll watch it." And so it ended up being about 14 people watching. Only two were there for the movie, and everybody stayed for the whole thing and had a
Oh,
fucking blast. It
awesome.
killed so hard,
It's
and
really good.
it's so good, and that speaks to the power of the movie, because these are people who, I don't know what their background is with porn. They just came in
Sure.
to fucking get stoned and eat some good food, and we don't they don't charge for the movies. And so when they walked in, I went up to just thank them for sticking around, and they were like, "Oh, this was a blast. We thought 20 minutes in, we were like, man, maybe we'll move." And then we just, before we knew it, the movie was over, and that made me so happy.
Mhm. It's awesome.
So yeah, so hopefully that gets a Melusine release soon because I think it's a beautiful movie. It's
Yeah.
one of Metzger's best, and it's a great example of like, we talk about some of these are like corruption and a women's torment. These are downbeat movies, and Barbara Broadcast, Opening of Misty Beethoven, Sex World. Those are like good comedies that are also at times genuinely erotic, but also at times just genuinely fun. Like when you're watching it, it's just so fun to watch.
Mhm.
I don't think there's a huge, if you get to a point where you're comfortable watching nudity, which some people are just not there, and that's, I guess
Sure.
there's not really that much you can do about that. But if you're comfortable watching nudity, it's a lot of the exploitation movies have similar beats, whether it's sex or action or horror. It's a lot of it is the same beats and rhythm, right? And so
Absolutely.
I do think it's a pretty easy transition into these movies if you already like a lot of the, like, I don't know, spaghetti westerns, the Pulici Techi movies, or like the Eroguro movies from Japan. Like a lot of these, if you're already into this stuff, it's really not a big leap to get into the golden age hardcore titles.
I agree. Yeah, I think you're right because there's people who like, I mean, there's Pinku, there's Roman porno, and obviously they all kind of have different.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to do with their cultures and what their kind of transgressions are. And I would say I would argue Pinku obviously is like way more like you have to be really oriented in a specific way.
Sure.
Especially anything with Naomi Tani.
Yeah.
That's I think a certain for a certain type of viewer. So I do think that like a lot of it's more digestible than people think. And luckily, everything I've shown, and it is a little bit of a branding for me because I've been running a stand-up show at the Pleasure Chest in West Hollywood for like almost as long as I've been doing stand-up, which is about coming up on 16 years. The show's been around for 14 years. So when the owners told me they were opening a restaurant next door and asked if I wanted to do anything, I mentioned the movie night. I had a lot of people coming who came to watch the show, and if they're watching stand-up at a sex shop, they're obviously going to be comfortable watching softcore cuts
Yeah.
of hardcore porn. And they've all said like this is they really enjoy it. And I also try to show something that, living in Los Angeles, you're really spoiled with repertory cinema. In fact, I'm probably one of the only people who doesn't get their money's worth on AMC A-list because, sure, I'm sure Hard Eyes is fun. I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna try and get to it,
It's
but it's
really
hard
bad.
when like well, yeah, and exactly. I'm like not in a rush to see it, and like I could go see it, but then also like I don't know. Last week I went to a double feature. The weekend it opened, I went to a micro cinema here called Whammy that was showing an Arthur Bresson Jr. double feature. So I was watching a double feature of gay porn with an audience that wanted to see a double feature of gay narrative porn,
Yeah.
and like. So it's I try to the reason behind that programming too is because I feel like it's something you really can't get even in LA. That stuff has its limitations to a couple screenings a year at New Bev and a little bit of here and there at other micro cinemas. And thankfully, like the programming scene, the reason I was able to start this um, was because Phil Blankenship, the programmer at the New Beverly, was like, "Oh yeah, here's who you can contact." And then I met Brett Berg from AGFA, who was like, "Yeah,
Awesome.
he gave me the list of what they have," and that eventually led to Distribpix booking some stuff through Stephen Meyerowitz, and then eventually Liz Purcell, who I think is one of the most invaluable people to uh, this type of film history and preservation. She's doing her own thing and does some really great programming. If anyone lives in New York, her stuff, in my opinion, is unmissable.
That's awesome.
Yeah, sorry, I hope that wasn't too much of a tangent.
I want people to go support you. I mean, it's clear you have a passion for this, and I think your curation game is probably very strong. So anybody in the LA area, go find this and support Eli.
Thank you.
Um,
Thanks, man.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. This episode's something that I think turned into something really I'm really happy with. I like the way this went down. So thank you, Celeste and Eli, both for preparing so much, especially because I know so
Yeah.
little about this world.
Yeah, absolutely. Any chance to talk about it? It's like I mean, I'm sure you could tell just from the conversation. It's like I very rarely get to talk about it outside of like more conversational aspects. So it like truly is like opening like one of those peanut cans that has like the snakes that pop out. And I'm just like, here's a bunch of information all at once, like a big list of stuff that I like have a hard time even keeping up with myself about it.
Yeah, it was really fun. I really appreciate your expertise because I feel like I'm like I probably know about more about this than like 99% of people at this point, but I still feel like I'm starting to learn and like I'm just kind of taking the audience with me as like, other experts. I'm just like referring to other experts in my own kind of discovery and education here. And so it was really nice to get to speak to somebody so knowledgeable about this. In that same vein, I had one question for you because when I
Yeah.
was looking into what Quality X is, I think it just said it's a theater or something. I'm like, I couldn't find any information about it. Do you know anything about what Quality X is or why they have their own line or whatever?
Great question. I also have been wondering the same thing. That's one of the only things that's eluded me. And the best that I could
Hmm.
tell was that Quality X is a production, like a distribution company or a production company that existed back in the day. Because when I was looking for vintage posters, some of the posters had the Quality X logo on the bottom corner.
Hmm.
And so I don't know if it was like a chain the same way. And I feel like it's something I should have looked into, but it's like one of those things where it's like we kind of were talking about. I keep every time I think I've discovered everything there's to discover, there's like a whole new rabbit hole to jump down. But what I do know is I believe it's the New York equivalent of like, so, here is the Pussycat Theater. One thing I learned was like when Sex World was being released theatrically, they actually won, the Pussycat Theater in particular won a landmark case that they could advertise it inside of buses in the LA area, which was apparently up until then a free speech issue. And
Interesting.
I suspect it's so Pussycat being their own chain. I think Quality X seems to be like the Big Apple version of that in some capacity. So they probably had like theaters and it's almost like the studio system. Like I think it was, but yeah, I wish I had like a real answer. And now I kind of want to go find it. But yeah, I that's what I loved about being on this too, because it's like you're asking the right questions. And these are questions that even for all the stuff that's stuck in my brain and that I know of and that I'm constantly reading about or listening to a commentary by, Ashley West or Casey Scott or Liz Purcell, I still feel like there's stuff I haven't, and I think the older I get, there's just less room kicking around in
Yeah,
here.
I hear
I
that.
that's I'm really feeling it now because I'm turning 40 and like uh I think that's part of it. But yeah, as far as I can tell, Quality X is a line that's based on some kind of New York, similar to Distrib but more like oriented to the actual theater or a production company.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Well, thank you all both so much. I think I'm ready to switch to the mainline stuff, but
Type.
I think this has been an awesome episode. So thank you all so much.
Thanks so much,
Yeah, of
Chris.
course. Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
Also, oh, one last shout out, Deep Inside Annie Sprinkle for anybody who just wants to see a fuck film. That's loaded with features. It would be criminal to leave that out because I think Annie Sprinkle's like a great example of what's aged really well with porn in terms of like how ahead of the curve she was. Sorry, I hope it was okay to jump that in there.
Any
No worries.
Sprinkle rules. So I haven't seen it yet. I do have it, but I will co-sign that just on the fact that I love her and she's great.